He is a professor that teaches business law at Mount St. Mary University. It's located in Los Angeles. There's much I want to speak to him about, and there is much that he can speak to us about. So help me welcome Professor Reams. Professor, how are you today?
Oh, I'm doing just fine, Professor Tenois, and everyone. Because of the wonderful work, it was an honor for the host and professor to invite me on the show because of all the great things. So it was because of her background or so. Professor is a wonderful title to provide to her from time to time. So also congratulations on this is your first year anniversary, I understand.
Yes,
is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Congratulations, because as an entrepreneur, it is wonderful that you've been able to do all this stuff, have an anniversary, and also have a good community that you've been working with. So the honor is all mine. I'm just here to help.
Well, listen, your help makes it so worthwhile. So I appreciate everything you have said to me thus far. But now let me lay at your feet why it is that I wanted to invite you to be a part of my endeavor. You know, I got the opportunity to ask the beloved Eddie Jones to be one of my guests. And for those of you who may not have been at that particular episode as an active listening participant, Eddie Jones hosts a talk show, Eddie Jones Radio Blog Talk Show. And when I asked him to be my guest, he turned right around and says, only if you'll be my guest. And this is how I learned of Professor. Well, I could call him Doctor too, because he got a whole lot of titles. But that's how I met the professor. But this is what I want the listening audience to know about you first. What role he plays in the Eddie Jones show. He only ties in all the elements to the show. I had no expectancy as to how the format was on Eddie's show, his platform. But at the tail end, he introduces this gentleman that we're going to talk to today, and he ties all the elements together. And this is what I heard in my spirit by way of my outer ear before I ever met him. I heard a sincere, an insightful, a learned man who possesses the true traits of what belongs to the mensch. And that's what this platform is all about. Now, I understand men and women can be menches. I understand. But in my growing up, it was really something that was more masculine in the Jewish community. So I'm wanting you to know just what I heard on that day. That's why I invited you. So with all the hats you wear, and thank you for being here, my first question to you, Professor, is when and how did it manifest your love for teaching?
Well, thank you so much, Professor Tenois. My love for teaching, it took a very, very long time because the fact that my family background, mother was a teacher, grandmother was a teacher, and sister became a teacher, but I was the one that would listen to all of their frustrations of teaching. So it was one of those things where it wasn't my first choice, but after going through some life experiences, like going to school and then getting the degrees and then working for the city and working for the University of Phoenix, by 2013, instead of being an administrator, I dearly enjoyed going in and just teaching people new things that they didn't know. And when it came down to many of them, because these were adult learners that I was working with, who were telling me that I need your class, in order for me to promote, then I said, okay, this is where it should be, because the fact that I'm helping these adults feed their families, feed their babies, do whatever it is so that whatever I've got, then I'll serve them in that way so that I can create a curriculum that helps them to promote. And so I would say that was 2013, and it was, the good Lord works in many different ways. He kept saying, you'd be a great teacher, you'd be a great teacher, but it took me about 30 years to figure that out, right? So he says, well, okay, it's about time. So once I had embraced it, then that's when everything started to come to pass, because in the teaching professor, as you know, it can have its ups and downs, especially when you're working with your students and you're trying to grade them, trying to get them to this point. But it's not until you see how you've impacted their life that it comes back to you to say that it's all well worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me say this too, and for the audience, when I met him, he just endeared upon me the name of professor. But it has a lot to do with what I just asked him. Because, the word tells us that we are known by our doings from being a child, whether it's good, whether it be right. And so I'm hearing the professor say that it was in his sphere, teachers, right? But he himself gravitated to it later. But it may have been just the fact he didn't recognize it in himself, because the two tied together, his passion and his teaching. And I love that, because, let me say this, Professor, I have asked pastors, how did you know your calling was a pastor? And they could trace back their care, how they were very caring of animals or people. Mm-hmm. And that's just what a pastor is called to do, is to care for the people, right? Right. So I love how you came into the knowledge to know that you are to teach, and I'm glad you accept that calling. Now, also listening audience, he is superb to have here today, not only because some of us all share the same passion to be entrepreneurs or are doing so already, but he is degreed in not only in having a BA in psychology, which we know no matter what job you're in, that really serves you well to be able to understand people who stand right before you. Mm-hmm. He is also degreed with a JD, so he is in law and in business and people. So he's just perfect for us to have today. So now, let me ask you this, Professor. Mm-hmm. You being degreed with a law degree and being an instructor in business law, what are those two disciplines? What did you find attractive in these disciplines?
Well, what was interesting about business law and all of this was the people connection. Because a lot of times we look at the law and it's always this thing which is separate from us. And when we look at business is its own entity. But when you take a look at the way the law is no different than the way that the good Lord created his law. It is something that protects us all, and that we need to understand its importance. Because again, this country deals with the rule of law, which says that no person is above the law, which tells us that we are all equal in every way under law as it's written. Now, as it's administered, that's a whole different thing. But what attracted me to the area is that law permeates everything. In every field of human endeavor, you have a rule, a policy, or something that tells you what or how you should behave, or what the rules of engagements are. It's almost like when you play Monopoly, you have all of these things in front of you of what you can, what you can't do. So to make it easier on people, because they say, oh, I don't, my focus is with my students, which I call my babies, is that I'm going to teach you what to do not to get sued. Okay? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because this is something that in business they take for granted. And I'm also with the Academy of Legal Scholars and Business. And the thing that business schools were trying to ignore was how important the law was, and we would have to fight like heck to get a business law course in there, because we would tell them, look, you won't have to pay what Fox is paying now if you had done the right things in the first place. You wouldn't have destroyed people's lives like Enron did if you were compliant with the law as we try to be compliant with God's law. Okay? So in that respect, that's what attracted it to me, because there's just a lot of information there, and if I can help to decode it for everyone, then it makes them a better citizen.
You know, I appreciate your response to that, because that's when you connect these two principles, these disciplines to God's Word, it's an excellent mirror that you're showing. For the simple fact, if we learn the concepts and principles of God's Word, then we don't always have to throw up His name. You operate in those principles.
Exactly.
So it's the very same thing in business that you're saying, that if you know these principles, how they intersect, it will save you, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I love that. That was a perfect depiction of how the two intersect. I love it. You know, thus far, the questions that I've asked you are questions that I often have asked myself, because, you know, I'm reflective, okay? So I always go back and, you know, check out me. Why is it that I like a thing? You know, is this something that I've picked up, or is this something that I've been doing along the way? You know, what attracts me to a certain thing? So these are questions that I'm asking you that I've asked myself. But in all honesty, Professor, if I would have had my ruthers, I would have been in the business of law also, because I wanted to be a lawyer, not to practice law. I saw myself as a judge, but I worked at this thing a few times, and it just didn't manifest. So me being a paralegal, I have never been a paralegal in the state of California, but I have my BA in that study.
Yes.
So for me, you mirror a life that I've been attracted to. I know that you're also a mediator. Okay?
Yes.
So there are so many things regarding you that I know you really can break down this concept of business. My next question for you, you know, being a business owner, we once have only known it in brick and mortar.
Yes.
But virtually, how strong of a business acumen do a person need to do business virtually?
Excellent question, Professor. One of the things that you are is a pioneer, right? Because the fact that this is uncharted territory. There were virtual businesses before when the internet started, but there wasn't the type of emphasis in trying to build a community as it is today. So the acumen that you have is your normal common sense of what is right, what is wrong, is good. The other thing is, if you have your understanding of accounting, marketing, and of course business law, that definitely helps. But it's also the idea that you know that when the pandemic happened, e-business flourished, right? Because we were all in one location. We couldn't go anywhere. The problem with that is that now that things are getting back to a kind of a normal, but we are still being very cautious, the numbers are now beginning to go down. So for the virtual, my suggestion is that you continue with the virtual, but you make sure you expand, and you also try out new platforms at all times. Business is in a process of reinventing itself. We don't know what's going to happen the next day or what's going to go around the corner overall. So when you keep that acumen of continuous learning, right, also staying curious, but also staying true to yourself and to your base, the folks who are working with you, who love you, who care for you, then you know that there is a process that you're going to follow to make sure that you make the right decisions. Because one of the things that I always think about when I think about this question is the old song "Gambler" Kenny Rogers. You know,
Yeah.
you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when
That's
to walk
right.
away, and know when to run. Same thing for the virtual, because a business is a business is a business, and as an entrepreneur, and you did mention in the question another question of being an online entrepreneur. No, I consider you not only a professor but an entrepreneur that just happens to be using one type of modality, and that's online.
No, finish your statement.
But online is just a modality which is going to go through its own evolution. So stay open and optimistic and to know what your options are and be able to move as quickly as possible when the changes occur. I yield back to you, Professor.
Yes. Well, let me tell you, that was very valuable, and I need to write it down, okay? Note to self. But you said something that goes towards my next question. When you say being true to self as a business owner. So that question that I had gave you, it had a part 2 to it.
Okay.
How important would you say, Professor, a person picking the right business? Is there such a thing that a person be the wrong person for the business that they're trying to go about?
Oh, absolutely. This is part of the journey of identifying what you won't do, what you're not going to do. No different than my journey on finding the love for teaching